great the way it's like, and stop.
Yeah.
This is
Look,
my
he's
LL
recording me now.
Everybody stop talking.
So Ray is a brand manager for Tote and Carry, which,
There you go.
I like it. Here's the thing I like about your style, Ray. It's that you pick a color and you stick with it. That's what I try to do. I just haven't branched out into so many different colors, but like black, it just works. You wear black and then you wear black shoes. What color pants you gonna wear? Black. You don't even have to think about it. Like Ray's in the blues and the whites. He's good to go. Michelle, she is extreme over there. She's got multiple colors. They all match, but that's
She
stressful.
got eyeglass rims that match.
I do.
Michelle, talk about attire for Sunday before we get to Sunday, by the way.
We
Oh,
should
yeah.
what? Talk about attire for Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, we keep Flash up there. So I just thought of that and I said it out loud.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna wear what I'm wearing today, so I guess I can't do that. So now I'll have to think about it since I wore it today.
Or you
Pick some
should.
colors. They're black.
You could be like me, Michelle. I just wear the same thing every day.
Yeah.
People used
Black.
to, have a lot to say about what I wore, and then I started wearing black every day, and it's like you just blend right in.
It's gotta go
Well,
all in.
I wear black a lot too. It makes a good canvas to put accessories on.
And I am an accessorizer. I like watches and shoes and belts. Oh man, and hats.
I like
You have
funky
a little bit of a
glasses.
hat game though, Rob. You have a little bit of a hat game. I've seen it.
Got some. The problem is I can't wear them. It's always too hot.
Oh yeah. He's got that sweat problem. They slide off his head.
I'm in my hat season, so I can wear hats.
Welcome to Second Take at Eastlake, a podcast of Eastlake Community Church in Irmo, South Carolina. You are invited to join us any Sunday at 9 or 11.
I gotta say though, today here in Irmo, South Carolina, it is 80 plus degrees.
Is it now?
November.
AC is back on today.
I'm thinking about going for a swim in the lake real quick.
I bet the lake's cold.
Yeah, it'll cool you down real quick.
Yeah, let's
Well,
go.
guys, do you guys want to get started? Get into the meat of this conversation? The meat and
Okay.
taters?
The meat and taters.
See how smart you guys are. I mean, my money's on you guys for sure on something good coming through here. But yeah, so in case you're just checking us out, we are in the middle of a really great series that is very good for conversation, designed for conversation actually, and it's a series called Gracism, with a G. I always say that just in case. Gracism, and we are over halfway through it. And this last Sunday, Ray was teaching. Pastor Ray here was teaching, and he was teaching on standing with you. I will stand with you. So what we're going to talk about today is that very thing, how we can be good at standing with each other. So just like a good, like off the top question for, especially for you, Ray, since you taught it, anyone chime in obviously, but what is the difference in standing with you versus some of the other sayings? Like, why is this saying important? Or what makes it different?
Well, when I think about I will lift you up, lifting can involve you just basically saying words that lift a person up. When I think about sharing revolves, maybe actions of giving something or distributing something. When I think about, let's see what else we got here. I'm looking at my bracelets because we got a whole lot of different ones. When I think of covering almost sounds like, either protecting or making sure that something's not left exposed or vulnerable. And then when I think about standing Standing is a posture type of thing. You can stand with someone physically, or you can stand with them socially. You can stand with them in other ways. But standing with requires, I think it feels like to be, standing with requires a lot more skin in the game.
Hmm.
And if I'm standing with someone that is under attack, that means I am putting myself in the line of fire.
Yeah.
That's a
I don't get
good
to
description.
stand with you apart from you.
Mm-hmm.
If Rob or Michelle makes a comment anywhere on social media, and I stand with them, that means any of the vitriol that happens to come their way is likely to come my way.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of Philip. Here's a real good example. When my brothers and sisters and I were growing up, when my mom was like, "Okay, no more talking," and the belt comes out.
Woo! Woo!
If I stand with my siblings, that means I might get hit. So I have to ask myself, am I going to stand with them, or I'm going to stand across the room and I'll talk to you after you've gotten your punishment? So
that's a good one.
Right. What I like about what you said is I think about I will share with you, I will lift you up and all those. And maybe this is too far, but I think you can do those more quietly than standing with somebody. So it's almost like those can be so behind the scenes. But if I'm standing there, just to continue that visual, it's like I have positioned myself with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't always mean I'm standing there because I agree with everything about you, but it means that I'm standing with you because I don't agree with the way you're being treated. I don't agree with the way being presented. And you brought up the online post. This morning I had a panic attack. I was on a website, a Facebook page that I read related to our school district, and there was a poll. I accidentally voted on the poll. I don't ever vote on the polls. And I realized when I looked down, I said, there's a check mark next to the one that I absolutely wouldn't have voted on, by the way, either. And I had this moment of, because I'm like, if somebody sees my name attached to that yes vote, which, by the way, I would not stand with, I went and I fixed that right away because I realized what you just said. My check mark on that particular thing, I won't get into detail on it, would legitimately cause some whoa, what are you doing? And the only reason I accidentally done it is I was clicking on it. Ready? I'm going to out myself to see who else had. I was trying to see what is that? How are these votes breaking down? And it was really not about individuals. It was about men and women. I wanted to see who was voting yes and who was voting no. And I accidentally actually voted. And so when we stand, it is very public.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it is.
And that's probably the difference that I see so far. The other ones can be public, but they don't have to be. You can share quietly.
Mm-hmm.
You can cover quietly. You can lift up quietly.
Mm-hmm. That's good. This doesn't exactly relate, but I have had a few opportunities in my life to, I don't know about you guys, but I always wonder like how I would react in a situation. And then some opportunities in my life have shown me how I react in certain situations. I'm not impressed with myself at all. Whenever I was at that airport in Dallas and somebody came in and shot up a gun, I jumped over everybody. I was out that building so fast. You would have thought I would be helping the elderly, small children, something, standing with somebody. Man, I jumped right out of there. It was like there was only one person in the room, and that was me. I was like, oh man, we're gonna have to work on that one. And then I remember in high school, now this one I'm glad I ran, but somebody was talking to the girls that we were with at Taco Bell, and they were just kind of like messing with them. And one of my friends started a fight with the guys, and I ran then too. So just so you know, I'm a runner. Don't ever get in a fight because I run the other way. But those are two funny examples, but honestly, you kind of wonder how you will do with people, when you're called by God. Those are silly examples, but when you're called by God to stand with somebody and how you'll react. And I actually in real situations, I find myself I do take up for the underdog pretty often. But anyways, yeah, good conversation. So that's I Will Stand With You. That's this series. I was curious. So this is a great question for us to all discuss, but is there anything that you have experienced that has made you willing to stand for someone? Is there anything in your when I say that, I mean, like, maybe previously you would have just let it go by, but something in your life has happened that has changed the way you now feel and you now stand with somebody, like a life experience. Because a lot of times we change throughout life. What I would do when in my 20s is different than what I would do now in my 60s. That was a joke. I didn't know if you guys
In your 60s.
Wait,
Sorry,
wait.
I was busy thinking about what story is he
Wait,
looking for me. Yeah,
wait.
sorry. Yeah, that was terrible.
I
Y'all
just
edit
feel
that
like you
out.
guys are so serious. You're so
Okay.
intellectual.
In my
I just
60s,
didn't
he
know.
says.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Anyways, that was a test. So is there
Yeah.
anything in your life that you've experienced that has changed the way you stand for people? Like you might not have stood for somebody before, but you do now, or whatever, or you see things differently. And I mean, I'll just start
Yes.
one too.
Yeah.
For instance, like I was oblivious to a lot of these concepts, even though they existed. Now it's real obvious, but until I met Ray. And honestly, until I started being discipled by Ray, my eyes have been opened a whole lot more to things that have been around my life. So my life experience with Ray has actually changed my ability to be a gracist. But that's an easy one. But what about you guys?
Well, I was
Mine,
thinking, whoop.
go ahead. Go ahead.
To me, I used to think that people that had financial troubles, like single moms who maybe were on welfare and people in those kinds of circumstances, that they weren't good at managing money, or they weren't good at that they had done something that put them in that circumstance, until I went through a divorce and learned from my own experience that you can be doing everything that you think is right and not be in control of your circumstances. And and then I discovered through my own circumstances, and what I discovered statistically that back it up, is that women who are divorced have they usually have 80% less of their income or their financial wealth. So if you look at a man and a woman who divorce, 10 years later, she's poor and his lifestyle has not changed. And most of the time, women are also the ones that are providing for the kids. Now, that's not true across the board. But, I'm a whole lot more understanding of single moms and their plight and their circumstance than I ever was before this happened to me.
Wow. Yeah.
Now I'm actually glad that I let you go before me, because that is mine. I am a fierce defender of single moms because that's what I was raised by. I watched my mom try to, not try to, but she raised 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, by herself for most of our lives. And that you gave, Pastor Michelle, is probably correct. She had to work, 12, 14-hour days to provide for us. And so while I do have a real soft spot for making sure that women that have been divorced or single by choice, whatever, that have kids, I try to make sure they have everything that they need But at the same time, because again, I watched my mom do this, I'm also not a pushover. So just because you have a story, everybody has a story. I'm just, the church's bank book or wallet is not open like that. I'm going to hold you or hold anybody feet to the fire to say, okay, so this is a situation you got in. So how can we make sure that this never happens again? And East Lake definitely is a place where, we look to give people hand ups, not hand outs. And so, we want to help, but we also want to make sure that you don't find yourself in this situation again. And I remember one particular instance where you got to sit in with me on a particular care case. And I basically said, hey, I don't want to see you here again because this did not have to be. And part of what happened was this person was existing without community. Well, how odd is it that now, I mean, you're out, you don't have community, but you're coming to a community seeking help. Well, guess what? If you went out of community, this probably wouldn't have happened. Because that means you would have been in relationships with people that would care about you and your kid and your plight, and they would have helped and made sure that you wouldn't have gotten this far down. And so to the person that's listening to this podcast, if you have not connected to a church, and yet you realize how hard it is raising these kids or kid by yourself, let that be a sign to you that this is more the reason why you need to be in a good community of people that will love on you and cover you and share with you and lift you up and all the things that are in Gracism.
That's good because Ray, when I love that you guys went there, because what, my first instinct is always to go to my son and the reality that raising a son of a different ethnicity, of a different race, all the human race, but you know what I mean, that person of color opens your eyes to a lot of the things that you might not have known before. But really, to me, what I think about when it first happened, I want to go back to the first time I got transformed from somebody who was standing either against or not even thinking about needing to stand with people. It goes back to the late 90s, 2000s. And honestly, I made my first gay friend. Now, I'm sure I had other gay friends before, but I mean, the person that's in the relationship, it was very clear that I met them. They came out to me. They were living out in the world. We were partnered on something completely non-church related, but it was about bettering our community. And there came an opportunity when this young lady, who I still love to this day, was attacked personally by people that were in my church. And I had to make a differentiation between maybe some differences in opinion that I would have with her in a conversation within our relationship about God's best. And the reality that I had to, and it was, bam, I didn't even know what happened until it happened. The next thing you know, I'm standing with my friend, chastising, lovingly, I think, because we're still friends too, chastising other people and saying, wait, why are you doing that? This is a human being right here. What are you doing? And it was at that point that I realized that there is a lot of things out there that are issues until we have friends that are parts of the quote unquote group that is an issue. And then once we start to get friends or some loved ones or you inserted here, it becomes easier if you're submitted to the Spirit. Okay, I'm not saying this is easy without the Spirit. If we're submitted to the Spirit, it becomes almost second nature to realize I'm going to stand for the dignity of these people that I love. And so for me, answering the exact question that you asked, it was first time for me was that. And it wasn't easy. We still have differences of opinion, me and this friend. And that is totally okay. But it was time to stand up because what they were doing to her was completely out of line, completely inappropriate, and completely contrary to the gospel. And so they put me in a position where I had to literally stand against church members and stand up for my friend.
Yeah.
That's hard.
The woman caught in adultery was doing, of course, there was a man involved in that too, but Jesus stood with her. It wasn't that he was saying, I love what you're doing. He actually said not to do that, but, still stood with her, standing with the person who's being attacked. Yeah. God is pro people.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I think as I listened to Rob's story and as I was thinking, about Ray and I talking about single moms, I think part of what we have to recognize about people who don't fit whatever the ideal is in society. So, maybe in America, it's a married couple with 2.5 kids and, a house in the suburbs, whatever that is, that the other people carry a weight. So Rob's friend who came out publicly around people who wouldn't agree with her, there's a weight to carry in that. And so what Rob was doing was help to shoulder that. When I was married, I did not understand the weight that single women carried, the pressure every day, and how different it was for me. I never understood it. And unless you've
Interesting.
been a single mom, you won't understand the weight. But there's a whole different pressure. There's no partner, there's no one to turn to when the kids are sick. If you don't make the money, there's no money. Whatever the situation is, there is a weight and a gravity that is there that you don't experience when you're the kid in that circumstance, or when you have a partner and you're married, that is unique to that position. And I think so much of what we do for marginalized people is help them to bear the weight of whatever has made them marginalized.
Yep.
Sometimes that's not financial, like Ray was saying about helping somebody in a care situation. Sometimes I just need somebody to say to me, hey, I know this is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And
To be with you.
empathize with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally be with me. Yep.
It's true. Is there any time that stands out above the rest that you could say, man, somebody really stood with me or stood with you? That you would just say, I can see that, they saw me there and they didn't leave me hanging,
When
Yeah,
I punched, oh sorry, Ray. Couldn't tell you. Go ahead.
So Charlotte and I we were dating, and when I say dating, I use that very loosely because we met and married in 6 months. So there's that. But I was the youth pastor, and I went to go pick up Bianca. Bianca was 8 years old at the time, and so it was very early on a Saturday morning, like 7:30 in the morning. And so I went to go pick up Bianca. Well, Shirley was a little slow getting Bianca up that particular day, and it invited me to come in and sit and wait. Well, by the time I got to church and got all the kids settled, we had our class. The next day, I get called into the pastor's office because someone had rolled by Sherlin's house and said,
Oh,
Pastor so-and-so has been spending the night. He is shacking up with that woman. And so the person that accused me of this, my pastor was the type of pastor that you're not going to accuse him and not be in the room. So that person was there, Shirley was there, and I was there. And when I heard that this little old lady had accused me of this, let me tell you, I was crushed because I didn't do that. That's not who I was, and I would not do that. And it was more than about the church. It was just my character. I would not do that. And the fact that this was somebody that I loved and ministered to, that she would make this accusation, it wounded me. But my pastor was so supportive, because the lady recanted and said, well, I really don't know if you were there overnight. It's just that when I rolled by there that morning, I thought to myself, because I didn't see you sitting in the car. And so it made me feel good that my pastor trusted me, trusted my testimony, trusted Shirley's testimony, and the way it was handled with this member. We were able to forgive one another and move on. But that's when I needed somebody to stand for me, and I was thankful that my pastor did.
Mm-hmm.
When we asked this question in staff last week, I think, I answered, and I had assumed everybody had heard this story. Our students have all heard this story if they were around 2 years ago or before. So I punched a teacher straight in the nose in 7th grade, just straight up knocked him down. I mean, blood out of whack, the whole 9 yards. Sent to the principal's office. Yeah, my parents come. They're just embarrassed. They don't care, but they care that that their life is being interrupted. And my parents are telling the principal to expel me because the principal's landed on that. And so we're sitting in the room, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Mr. Meyer, who I just jacked him right up. He wants a few minutes alone with Mrs. Holden, was her name. So we're out in the office, and my parents are telling me my life is over and all this other nonsense. And I get called back in there, and she's not super happy because what he has done is he has said, I don't want this young man expelled. I want to take this young man under my wing. And yes, there has to be punishment, but please don't expel him. He's a 7th grade kid. He needs a shot. And I had to spend the rest of the year with Mr. Meyer. I mean, every day after school, I got suspended for 3 days, and I spent the rest of the year with Mr. Meyer. This was 7th grade year. I graduated from high school because of Mr. Meyer, because he stood up for me. And what I found out later is what he said to Mrs. Holden was, what happened today is a product of what happens to this young man every day at home. I want to give him an alternative. If he blows it, fine. Get rid of him, but don't get rid of him until he blows it again. Wow. And I never had another problem in school, not one time. After that 5 months of literally, and I didn't share this the other day. This man would take work I had done and put it back on the shelf, so I'd have to do it again because he was running out of stuff for me to do. And so I didn't catch that at the very end. I'm like, wait a minute, I already did all this music, because I would have to file the music and do it alphabetical and all that stuff. But he was making sure that I was there all the way until the end of the school year. And he has shown up, and I mean this, every one of my graduations. Since every single one of them. Stood up for me.
Incredible.
Gave me but no one else was going to, including my own parents. My mom, I remember my mom saying, well, I'd expel him if I were you.
Thanks, Mom.
Yay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy. What about you, Michelle?
Oh, I feel like I have experienced so many people standing with me in my journey at Eastlake. You know, from the time I arrived here, I mean, Ray's the 3rd pastor that I've served under. And there have been people on staff who have cared for me. I mean, a couple years ago, you and Kristen and your kids came, and you and your kids mowed my lawn or did the trimming or did all of that.
I forgot about that.
Because I was in school and juggling some things, and you guys just came over and did it. Blessed my socks off. And every iteration of this staff prior to this, there have been people that have done things like that along the way. And that kind of thing, like when you did that, I was like, okay, Philip sees me. He sees me. He understands I've got a struggle, and he's willing to put practical help around that. And you other guys have done that for me too. Both Rob and Ray have done that in different ways. But, you know, those are just the tangible things that when that happens, it just means the world.
Yep. That's very cool.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Man, that makes me want to have more capacity in my life right now to do more things like that. Maybe I am still.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, the secret is I need to make sure I have capacity to keep. Yeah, that's good, Michelle. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I mean, my whole life is the same thing. There's been people all throughout it that have been there for me. I mean, whether it's been my parents. One that stands out though was a professor in college that I was just busy. I was doing things in ministry. I was at a church leading worship, and I was leading worship at different events and different things. and my schedule was booked 200 days a year, and I was going to school full time, and I had music theory, I think it was 3 days a week, and Miss Dr. Stutz was my theory professor, and she just worked with me instead of getting rid of me or flunking me out. She was just like, she looked at my schedule and she said, "Here's the thing, I want to help you get through this because I believe in what you're doing, and we've got to get through this. You got to do the work, but we're going to adapt your schedule to where it will work with your ministry." And it changed everything for me. I don't know if I would have had to say, I can't do both, I have to do A or B, but instead she allowed it to all happen. And I think
That is
Smith
so
was like
cool.
one. Yeah. And Dr. Stutz, she still teaches. She's still a professor there. Incredible lady. She didn't, and
You
again,
know,
what you said, Michelle, is like she didn't just see me as a student. She saw me as an individual. And same thing with Rob's story of like, what does this person need as an individual?
Yep.
Oh
which
man.
is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and the three of you, your stories, I wonder if you'd even be in ministry. I mean, Philip, would you have gotten burned out and said, I couldn't do this? Rob, would you have ever gotten exposed and had the heart to do what that teacher did for you? And Ray, if you had been accused of some impropriety and it stood, I mean, I just listened to the three of you. Those are pretty impactful influences in your life that could have, probably did, change the trajectory. Maybe you wouldn't be here today.
Yep.
The other thing that struck me, Michelle, and Philip and I, it's not as much in race because that was a false thing. The people that stood for us made a decision to not do what would have been just. It would have been fine to say you got to go. I mean, that fell within the lines of behavior that would get you expelled from school. That falls within the lines of a teacher saying, "Sorry, you get a 0 on that assignment, Philip." But what Philip said, they chose to see the humanity of the person in front of them and say, "I'm going to work with that." How often do we do that with the people around us? Do we look beyond what is just and say, but I'm still going to extend this favor. You don't deserve it. I don't mean that arrogantly. You don't deserve this favor, but here's favor. And I'm going to stand with you. Like Jesus with us. I mean, that's the natural connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's cool. A fun thing about this too, we're over halfway through the series, and much of the conversation is about Gracism in a black and white, ethnicity conversation, which it needs to be in many cases, but it's not just that. This Gracism series, it plays out not just in between black people, white people, Asian people, or whatever. It plays out in every part of your life. You can be a gracist, not just racially. I guess that's probably the best way to say it. It's not just a racial sermon series. It's a way to interact with everybody that you encounter. And so don't miss that, And it is quite often right now, it is a black and white thing, and that's okay. But don't just put it in that box. Yeah, so what, this is a question we talked about today in one of our meetings, but it's about unity and why is it so important to God that we stand with people, that we do all these things with people that are not like us? Why does God not just let us divide? Like, why can't we just go where it's comfortable? And why is he so passionate about this? Because at first glance it would be easier to just segregate and exist with like-minded people. I mean, put me in a room full of hippies with a bunch of vans and we'll have a good time. We'll travel across the country. But somehow I'm in here with you people on Zoom. I'm kidding. But like, why is that so important for us to be diverse and unified?
Because it's the way God created it to be. I mean, you think about just your own physical body. When your cells begin to break down, then things start to fall apart. Things start to hurt. Functions become dysfunctional. And you begin to unravel. If there's one race, and I believe that there's the human race, made up of many different cultures. If we can get this right, and this is upon the church to do, because we are to be the physical representation of God in the world. If we get this right, then more people will give homage and glory and acknowledgement to God, because only God can do this. But when we subdivide and get into our tribes and those become greater than God's plan, what happens is what we are seeing happening right now. There's lots of tribalism. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of violence. And those that are caught in the middle are grieving. I mean, when mom and dad split up, do you think the kids are actually saying yes? No. No, they I mean, even if it's a violent situation, what the kids want is for there to be peace. They didn't ask to be here. I don't think any of us asked to be here. We weren't given a ballot and said, okay, birth or no birth, or earth or no earth. We're here. So we need to figure out how to play in God's big sandbox so that he might be glorified.
Mm-hmm. God's big sandbox.
Like that,
You
Ray.
know, and I think that is so true. We all need to learn to play together and have peace with one another. And that is the way that God created it. But in addition to that, I think by not doing it, we miss so much. Yes, I mean, have you ever noticed that the things that you have to work the hardest for, you value oftentimes the most? And so I think about going to school to get my degree. I mean, I could have done it as a younger person and done it in a lot less time, but I worked really hard for it. And I really value it because I worked so hard to do it. And I think that as I expand my relationships with people who are not like me, yes, it's hard and there's lessons to be learned, but it's also wonderful. What a delight to learn new things and experience new things and see things with new eyes. Where if I just stay in my echo chamber of everybody that's like me, I miss so much of the beauty of the world. And
Yeah.
so I think, Philip, you talked about Ray opening your vision, where this subject is concerned. And I would agree, mine has been opened by Ray too. But how much more do we enjoy that diversity than we would have ever had we not been able to change perspectives?
Definitely.
Yeah.
My world has gotten bigger because of it. Because I don't see people anymore. I didn't even know I did this, but like, as, oh, those could be my people or those would not be my people. Like I met some people this morning that most people would be like, you wouldn't be their people. We don't even speak the same language. They speak Spanish and I don't speak it. But I'm telling you, the more I try to speak to them, we're each other's people. I mean, we find ourselves like laughing hard, like till we're crying almost. Not that much, but like we're laughing hard at trying to explain what orders, and like all of a sudden I feel like these are my people, So our world gets bigger. It just does, and it is beautiful. And so it is important. And if you come to East Lake and I've been at East Lake 4 years now. I think I just had my anniversary. I'm old, 4 years old.
Whoop, whoop.
But you might feel like, man, they really talk about this kind of thing a lot. And, I wonder why they talk about this so much. And, you guys can weigh in on this because I'd love to hear your thought. But for me, it's all over the Bible. I just didn't know it most of my life. I read the Bible differently. And it's like, how could you do that? I don't know. I guess we just receive messages and things through the lens of the person who's teaching us or whatever. How does that happen? Actually, that's a great question. How does that happen?
Well, this is why I'm so grateful that Ray and I are coming off of the conversation we just came off of on a Zoom before this. We were just talking about this, and we talk about the fullness of the gospel, and we think the fullness of the gospel is this work that Jesus did that gets us to heaven. And even though that is a part of the gospel, don't mishear me. The gospel is about reconciling everything and everybody to each other. So from Genesis to the end of Revelation, God is in the business of prepping us to prepare us for this idea of reconciling across cultures. The entirety of the New Testament, I learned this from Dr. John Feuder in the early 2000s. The entirety of the New Testament is Greeks and Hebrews figuring out how to get along. James, all the things that we read. And until somebody showed that to me, I just liked the platitudes of this salvation thing that are really worth it, by the way. I mean, salvation is it, but salvation in each other across tension divides.
Yeah.
It's so freeing now that I see that. And I just would love for everybody to see it. And I know I had to go on a journey, so I know you can't rush it. But my prayer is that people can embrace that. And when they say, just be about the gospel, we are.
We are.
Because the gospel's about ethnic, cultural reconciliation along with reconciling to God. And that's the first one. And then the rest of it is all about fixing all of these relationships. There's so much freedom in that, because then you can have compassion on people too. Because you'd be like, oh, you just don't know.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true.
You know, what's funny is that, so upon casual observation, you miss these things because we've casually been looking at and reading, and some would say studying, but we've been casually doing this. But if you really sit down and think about this, why does Jesus bring up the fact that he's telling his disciples to go first to just the Jews in Matthew 10? He tells them, don't go to the Samaritans. Don't leave the country, as a matter of fact. But then why by the end of Matthew 28, he's telling them to go to all the nations? I think we do ourselves a horrible disservice when we lie to ourselves and say that everything is fine. The reality is, it's not fine. That's why Jesus came. That's why he left us with a mission, because he wants us to complete the work that he started. He was about reconciling the Jews to the Gentiles. Things are not the way they're supposed to be right now. There are people in your family that you don't get along with. There are people at your job you don't get along with. There are cultures that you are literally terrified of because of fear, because of ignorance. You don't understand them. And so what we tend to fear are things that we don't understand. So why lie to ourselves and say that, well, if they would just get their act together and say, wait a minute, Jesus is in the business of reconciling all people. So what part in this do I get to play? Because I'm a people, and there are people that I am not at peace with, I'm not in relationship with, and Jesus, help me to make this happen for your glory.
Oof. It's a good word, Ray. I feel like we need to chop that little piece and put that out there into the world, what you just said. That's a nice little nugget of truth.
Yep.
It's good. Well, we're going to have to sign off because we're out of time, but this is a great conversation that we're continuing this Sunday. And Pastor Rob, Pastor Michelle are going to be co-teaching, double teaching, tag team teaching. And my ADD loves that kind of stuff. It just changes it up. So bring it on anytime you want to do that.
Philip, we're going to have to get him. We're going to have to get him.
Yeah. Oh, me and Ray tag team.
Said, if me and tag team teach, shut it down.
Dude, shut down. Tag worship and tag teach all in one
Oh
Sunday?
my gosh.
Oh
my
man, the
word.
world's not ready.
Okay, Rob, you and I can take the weekend off. That's all I can say. If they're going to tag
Not
team
only
worship
that,
and teach, I'm out.
Oh, that's funny, man. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna sign off, but we will catch up with you guys Sunday, if not sooner. See you later.
Bye.
Eastlake Community Church is an intentional, multicultural community empowered by the Holy Spirit. We passionately pursue a loving relationship with God and everyone Jesus was sent to die for, here, near, and far.